Saturday morning, October 15th, 1983, Mountain View, California. A boxy stucco apartment complex. 6:47 a.m. FBI Special Agent Alan Power watches through binoculars from across the street. Second floor window. James Durward Harper Jr. moves through his apartment, balding, slightly dumpy, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He doesn't see the 47 federal agents surrounding the building, doesn't know about the 33-page affidavit documenting his every move for the past 6 months, doesn't know his lawyer already tried to cut a deal, doesn't know the deal fell apart. Power speaks into his radio. All units move in. The apartment door has a lone, ailing geranium next to it. A miniature Venus de Milo statue sits in the concrete courtyard below. Harper opens his door to get the newspaper. 6 agents stand there. James Durward. Harper Jr., you're under arrest for espionage. Harper's face goes white. His hands start shaking. The agents walk him inside, show him the FBI affidavit. Harper sits down at his kitchen table, reads the first page, then the second. His voice cracks. Oh my God, they know everything about it. They know everything. He collapses forward onto the table. His third wife, Penny Cook, watches from the bedroom doorway. Within hours, she'll vanish from the apartment. She'll divorce him before the trial. But right now, at 6:53 a.m. on this Saturday morning, James Harper's life as he knows it ends. The engineer who made $1,000 per week just lost everything. And the reason? A stack of photocopied documents. Secret missile defense plans. Stolen from his dead wife's office. Sold to Polish intelligence for $250,000. But here's what makes this case different from every other Cold War spy story. Harper didn't work for the government, had no security clearance, no access to classified information. So how did a broke Silicon Valley consultant sell America's most sensitive nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union? The answer involves a drinking buddy, a desperate secretary, and late-night trips to an empty office in Palo Alto. And it all started because Harper's wife worked for the wrong company. James Durward Harper Jr. was born in Fresno, California in 1933, grew up in Fairfield, a small town in north-central California. His parents separated when he was young. In 1950s Fairfield, divorce was rare. Friends later remembered Harper as having the typical problems a boy without a father has. No one to kick him in the fanny when he went astray. His value system was screwed up, but Harper was brilliant, naturally quick at math and science. First-string high school football halfback at Armijo High School, played basketball, ran track. In his senior year 1952, Harper broke his leg in the first game of the football season, had to watch from the sidelines as his team won the Superior California Athletic League championship. They named him honorary captain anyway. In the Armijo High School Yearbook, the Class Wills section where seniors jokingly bequeathed things to underclassmen, Harper wrote something prophetic. I, James Harper, will my ability to spot black police cars at great distances while driving around town to Ed Serpas. Even then, he was thinking about avoiding law enforcement. After graduation, Harper enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, got sent to electronics school. The Marines recognized his technical aptitude, assigned him to a radar station in Alaska as part of the Distant Early Warning System. The DE-to-W line, America's first line of defense against Soviet bombers coming over the North Pole. Harper learned about high-voltage power supplies, transformers, cutting-edge electronics, military technology. When he left the Marines in the early 1960s, Harper had specialized knowledge that Silicon Valley desperately needed. He moved south to the Santa Clara area, married a woman he'd known in school named Colleen, started his first business, Harper Magnetics. Former colleagues remembered him as absolutely brilliant in the field of high-voltage power supplies and transformers, a gambler willing to take big risks, similar to the other early tycoons of the infant high-tech industry. But Harper Magnetics folded almost immediately. Harper bounced around Silicon Valley working for different companies, living on the edge financially. Then in 1973, Harper tried again, founded Harper Time and Electronics. The company developed what's been called the world's first digital stopwatch, an outgrowth of Harper's interest in sports. For a brief moment, success seemed possible. The stopwatch worked. The technology was revolutionary. But Harper's personal behavior destroyed the company. Former partners reported he spent $50,000 to $75,000 of company money on himself. On one business trip to Switzerland, expected to last 1 week, Harper stayed a month, fell in love with a woman, and brought her back to California. The board of directors fired him in 1974, 1 year after he founded the company. Court records show Harper was $135,000 in debt. The company went bankrupt. The patent rights to the digital stopwatch were sold as part of Harper Time's assets. Other entrepreneurs made millions from Harper's invention. Harper got nothing but debt and failure. By 1975, James Harper was desperate, divorced from Colleen, struggling financially, drinking heavily. He'd befriended a business associate named Neil Schuler and Schuler's wife, Ruby Louise Schuler. Louise Schuler, as she preferred to be called, was from Mobile, Alabama. She disliked the name Ruby. In 1972, she'd taken a job as a secretary at Systems Control Incorporated in Palo Alto. Systems Control was described by executives as technological problem solvers. They designed the San Jose Library System, the traffic control system for the Hong Kong Tunnel, and they had numerous defense contracts. Highly theoretical studies about ballistic missile defense. Given a particular radar, what is the best way we can use our radar to defend our missiles that are still in silos? Louise Schuler had a secret security clearance. As assistant to Robert Larson, the president of Systems Control, she had access to numerous kinds of classified reports. She also had a secret. Louise was Robert Larson's mistress. For 10 years, they'd been having an affair. Louise was in love with him, expected him to leave his wife. But late in their relationship, Larson told Louise he had no intention of leaving his wife for her. Louise was devastated, bitter, cynical, and she started drinking. Vodka at her desk before lunch. Her friends noticed the glazed look in her eyes, the visible shaking in her hands. By the mid-1970s, Louise Schuler's marriage to Neil Schuler was falling apart. They divorced. Harper's marriage to Colleen had already ended. Harper and Louise had actually dated briefly years before, but she'd turned him down multiple times. Harper had written her off. Then one night in 1979, Harper was standing at a bar in Silicon Valley, drinking alone. Louise Schuler tapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, mister, can I buy you a drink?" Harper looked at her. "Yeah, you can buy me a drink." He leaned closer. "You play your cards right. You can spend the night with me." Louise smiled. They fell in together quickly. Two desperate people, two heavy drinkers, both feeling like failures. They eventually moved in together. For Harper, it seemed like maybe life was turning around. Then Louise started telling him about her job. Harper listened as Louise described the classified documents she handled at Systems Control. Ballistic missile defense research, Minuteman missile survivability studies, nuclear strategy planning, reports about how the United States planned to protect its nuclear arsenal from a Soviet first strike. Harper's mind raced. Jesus Christ, she's working right in the middle of a berry patch for me. He thought about William Bell Hugel. Hugel was a minor legend in Silicon Valley. Harper had met him years earlier. Drinking buddies, people called them. Hugel was a politically connected entrepreneur who loved international travel, loved dropping names, loved the hustle of fast-paced business. Hugel had grown up in Cincinnati, studied chemistry and physics at the University of Chicago, married his classmate Francis Sarnat. They moved to Santa Clara in 1961 and co-founded several Silicon Valley companies: Optoelectronics, Stewart Warner Microcircuits, Siliconics. Hugel Industries became one of the top 5 semiconductor equipment companies in the 1960s. But Francis Hugel died in 1968 at age 40 of cancer. Hugel remarried and kept hustling, traveled constantly to Europe. He'd even run for Congress as a Democrat in 1972, campaigned for withdrawing troops from Vietnam, ending marijuana prosecutions, strengthening environmental laws, then dropped out before the primary, citing business commitments. Federal bankruptcy records from 1975 showed something interesting about Hugel International, one of Hugel's firms. A payment of $648,000 from Unitra east of Warsaw, Poland. Unitra was a Polish state-run electronics importing and exporting company. Hugel had business contacts in Poland. Harper knew this, and Harper had a theory. "I bet you I can sell this to the Eastern Bloc through Hugel." Harper gave Louise some guidelines on what documents to look for. Louise started bringing work home. Harper sorted through the papers. Jesus Christ, some of this stuff was incredibly valuable. Harper approached Hugel with his idea. According to the FBI, Hugel was the one who made the introduction. In May 1975, Hugel introduced Harper to two Polish contacts. One of them was Zdzisław Przekojien, an official in the Polish Ministry of Machine Industry, former business associate of Hugel's, and according to the FBI, an officer in the Polish intelligence service, the Służba Bezpieczeństwa, the SB. Using the ministry as a cover for intelligence gathering activities, the Poles had what they called a shopping list, American technology and documents they wanted to acquire. The list had been drawn up in Poland, but it was derived from a master list compiled in Moscow by Soviet engineers and scientists. The KGB wanted specific information about American missile defense, and they were willing to pay for it. In November 1975, Harper made his first sale. Between $5,000 and $7,500 worth of documents. Court records don't specify what those documents contained, but they were classified, and they came from Louise Schuler's office at Systems Control. For the next 3 years, the trail goes cold in FBI records. Then in May 1979, everything escalated. Harper took a trip to Europe. His diary, which he kept meticulously, recorded the details. Arrived Geneva 9:30 to meet Hugel. Bill and I went to room to talk biz. Many interesting opportunities. Agreed to return in Eve to phone contact in Warsaw. So-so dinner while Hugel's wife bummed everyone out. Harper and Hugel split up. Harper went to Paris to meet his family for vacation. Then Hugel sent word. Przekojien would meet Harper in Warsaw. Hugel would join them. Hugel told Harper how to smuggle the documents into Poland, taped them to his body under his clothes. Harper flew to Warsaw. Met with Przekojien and Hugel at a villa. Przekojien explained what he wanted. Detailed information about American ballistic missile defense, the Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile system, how America planned to protect its missiles from a Soviet preemptive strike. The three men made an agreement. According to the FBI affidavit, they agreed to divide proceeds equally, 1/3 to Harper, 1/3 to Hugel, 1/3 to Harper's sources for the documents, which meant Louise Schuler. Harper returned to California and proposed to Louise, not exactly a romantic gesture. Friends later said it was more like, "What the hell, we're not doing anything this weekend, let's get married." They went to Reno. Some chapel. Very casual. Louise wore blue jeans. A witness remembered the ceremony. Then Harper explained to Louise what he needed. Louise agreed. Whether she agreed because Harper paid her, or because he wined and dined her, or because she was getting revenge on her former lover Robert Larson, nobody knows for certain. Louise's friends believe she was manipulated. FBI investigators who listened to wiretaps of Louise developed sympathy for her. "I felt badly about Ruby Louise," one veteran agent said. Either way, Louise started helping Harper steal classified documents from Systems Control Incorporated. Late at night, Harper and Louise would drive to the Systems Control offices in Palo Alto. The building would be dark, empty. Louise had keys. She had access. She'd open the safe in Robert Larson's office, take out documents by the bagful. Harper and Louise would drive back to their apartment, spend the night together photocopying the documents, page after page after page. Louise would return the original documents to the safe early the next morning before anyone arrived at work. No one suspected anything. No one noticed. By the end of his espionage operation, Harper accumulated as much as 100 pounds of paper, 100 pounds of classified missile defense documents. He stashed some at his apartment, some in a safety deposit box in Tijuana, Mexico, some in his electronics workshop, and he started meeting with Przekojien to make deliveries. Harper flew to Warsaw multiple times, flew to Vienna, to Geneva, to Mexico City. Each time he carried documents, Przekojien gave him code names. Harper called Przekojien the minister in his conversations with his lawyer. Hugel was the big man. Harper used other contacts whose names appeared in FBI records only as Jacques and other code names. The meetings followed a pattern. Harper would arrive at a hotel. Przekojien would meet him in a room. Harper would hand over the documents. Sometimes they were bound. Sometimes they were loose. Sometimes pages were missing, and Harper had to scramble to put them back together. Przekojien didn't seem to care. The Poles were excited, so excited that in June 1980, Soviet KGB Director Yuri Andropov authorized a team of about 20 KGB analysts and engineers to fly from Moscow to Warsaw. They evaluated the large volume of documents Harper had delivered. The material was so valuable that Andropov, who would later become Soviet premier, gave commendations to the Polish agents who acquired it. The intelligence was exactly what Moscow wanted. Detailed information about how the United States planned to defend its nuclear forces, what American intelligence agencies knew about Soviet strategic arms strength and missile accuracy, research and development efforts that cost the United States $4 billion to develop. John Cunningham, acting director of technology in the Army's ballistic missile program and advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the National Security Council, would later testify that the information Harper sold had done damage to the United States that could have severe effects even into the 21st century. The damage was incalculable, but for Harper it meant money, stacks of $100 bills. Harper's relationship with Hugel started deteriorating quickly. Hugel wanted his cut. Harper wanted to cut Hugel out. In August 1980, Harper and Louise traveled to Vienna. Louise brought documents from Systems Control. Harper planned to deliver them to Przykogien, but when they arrived at the hotel, something went wrong. Przykogien examined the documents. Then he told Harper they were worthless. "Worthless as a cold cup of tea," Przykogien said. "Child's play. We're not going to pay you anything for them. And we're not paying you the $15,000 we promised for the last batch either." Harper was seething. He stormed out of the room. Found Hugel drinking at the hotel bar. The two men argued. Hugel had clearly tipped off Przykogien that Harper was trying to cheat them. Harper realized Przykogien wanted to cut Hugel out too. The Poles wanted to deal directly with Harper, eliminate the middleman. By the end of 1980, Harper had automatic visa clearance at the Warsaw airport arranged by Przykogien. Harper was meeting the minister on his own. No more Hugel. And the payments got bigger. In one meeting, Harper delivered documents and Przykogien handed him a big envelope. Harper started counting the $100 bills. Got about a quarter of the way through, said, "Oh, hell with it. It has to be here. I can eyeball it. It's all $100 bills." $100,000 in that envelope alone. Over the next 2 years, Harper delivered 37 classified reports to Polish intelligence. 61 total reports were photocopied. 37 made it to the Poles. The rest stayed in Harper's stash, ready for future sales. The FBI would later calculate that Harper received more than $250,000 total for the documents, and Harper was spending the money fast. He paid off debts to his ex-wife Colleen and their children, bought expensive electronics equipment, a video recorder and camera for what he claimed were clandestine communications, though he later complained he got stuck with all that equipment when it didn't work properly. Harper maintained Swiss bank accounts, Cayman Islands accounts, cash stashed in multiple locations. He traveled constantly. Geneva, Vienna, Warsaw, Mexico City, living the life of an international spy. For a broke Silicon Valley engineer, it must have felt like he'd finally hit the jackpot. But Louise Schuler was falling apart. By 1981, employees at Systems Control noticed something was wrong with the company president's secretary. Louise was sipping vodka at her desk before lunch, jetting to weekends in Mexico. Once someone saw her at a bank with a stack of $100 bills. Her hands shook visibly. She had bigger mood swings. You'd go into her office and her hands would be trembling. Her drinking was no longer hidden. The glazed look was constant. Louise's friends grew increasingly worried. Kelly Kelso, who played piano and sang in bars and worked as a babysitter, said Louise was someone you just loved at first sight. But the affair with Robert Larson had devastated her, and whatever Harper had gotten her involved in was destroying her. By June 1983, Louise Schuler checked into the hospital. She took a bottle of liquor with her. Cirrhosis of the liver. Her body was shutting down. At 39 years old, Louise Schuler died on June 10, 1983. She never knew what Harper was doing with the documents, her friends insisted later. She never knew where the money came from, but FBI investigators weren't so sure. Either way, Louise Schuler died before the FBI arrested Harper. She never faced charges, never testified, never explained her role in one of the worst intelligence leaks in Cold War history. And with Louise dead, Harper lost his source. But he still had documents, 150 to 200 pounds of classified papers stashed in various locations. And he still thought he could keep selling. Except Harper had made a critical mistake years earlier. A mistake that was about to destroy everything. In September 1981, 2 years before his arrest, Harper had contacted a lawyer named William Doherty. Harper didn't give his real name, called himself Jay. Met Doherty at least 8 times in various bars and coffee shops around Silicon Valley. Doherty had represented Christopher Boyce, the convicted spy from the Falcon and the Snowman case. Harper had seen Doherty's name in a book about Boyce, thought maybe Doherty could help him cut a deal. Harper told Doherty he'd been selling classified documents to Polish intelligence, wanted immunity from prosecution in exchange for becoming a double agent, a counterintelligence asset for the United States. Doherty spent months trying to convince John Martin, the Justice Department's chief of internal security, to grant Harper immunity. Doherty relayed pretty damn decent information about Harper's trips abroad, his dealings with Polish agents, his network of contacts. But justice wouldn't bite. We wouldn't offer immunity, Justice Department spokesman John Russell confirmed later, at least until he was more forthcoming. His lawyer didn't even know who he was. For 2 years, Harper tried to negotiate anonymously, sent messages through Doherty to the FBI and CIA, offered to work for American intelligence, but the government wouldn't trust an unknown person. Meanwhile, someone else was giving the FBI information about Harper, someone the FBI called only the source, a high-ranking officer within Polish intelligence, a mole. As early as Harper's first trip to Poland in 1975, and certainly by 1979, when Harper met with Polish agents and gave them a list of top-secret documents he had access to, the source had been detailing the minister's dealings with an unnamed California businessman to his American handlers. For years, the FBI had reports about an American selling missile secrets to Poland, but they didn't know who. The source could provide details about the meetings, the payments, the documents, but couldn't identify the American. In June 1983, 3 months before Harper's arrest, Louise Schuler died. That same month, the FBI finally pinpointed James Durward Harper Jr. as the American businessman the source had been telling them about for years. Once they had a name, everything accelerated. FBI surveillance began immediately, 3 rotating vehicle teams maintaining visual contact at all times, 2 fixed observation posts equipped with long-range cameras and audio monitoring equipment, 1 technical specialist monitoring electronic communications under authority granted by a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant approved by the FISA court on March 15, 1983. Every movement was logged with precise timestamps and geographic coordinates, every transaction photographed and documented. The surveillance logs for April through October 1983 filled hundreds of pages of single-spaced entries. Wiretaps on Harper's home phone revealed discussions about bank accounts, Swiss accounts, Cayman Islands accounts, conversations about documents, about money, about travel. The FBI intercepted Harper's mail, monitored his movements, watched him work out of his electronics laboratory at his Mountain View apartment, watched him meet contacts. By October 1983, agents feared Harper was preparing to flee the country. They knew he had 150 to 200 pounds of additional classified documents ready to deliver to Polish intelligence. FBI Special Agent Alan Power prepared a 33-page affidavit documenting the entire operation. The affidavit detailed Harper's meetings with Polish intelligence from 1975 through 1983, listed the documents he'd stolen, described how he obtained them through his deceased wife, Ruby Louise Schuler, included information from the source within Polish intelligence, included wiretap transcripts, surveillance photos, financial records, bank account information. The affidavit described Harper's network of contacts, William Bell Hugel, who allegedly introduced Harper to the Poles, Czesław Przechodzian, the minister, the Polish SB officer operating under cover of the Ministry of Machine Industry, and various other individuals involved in the conspiracy. On October 13, 1983, a federal magistrate issued an arrest warrant for James Durward Harper Jr. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, October 15th, the FBI moved in. Harper opened his apartment door to get the morning newspaper. 6 FBI agents stood in the hallway. "James Durward Harper Jr., you're under arrest for espionage." They walked him inside, showed him Agent Power's affidavit. Harper sat at his kitchen table and read it, page after page of his own words, his own meetings, his own crimes documented in excruciating detail. He collapsed forward. Oh my God, they know everything about it. Everything. His third wife, Penny Cook, watched from the bedroom. Within days, she would disappear, eventually divorce him. Harper's life as he knew it was over. At the federal courthouse, U.S. Magistrate Owen E. Woodruff reviewed the charges. Harper stood before him, balding, slightly dumpy, wearing the same jeans and shirt he'd worn when arrested, a 3-day beard stubble on his face, blinking behind his glasses. Woodruff denied bail. "Your life has been a commute between here and Europe," Woodruff told Harper. "I am particularly persuaded by portions of the affidavit suggesting extensive travel between here and both Western and Eastern Europe." The magistrate feared Harper would flee, especially because Swiss bank accounts were involved. Harper was charged with delivering national defense information to a foreign government, receiving more than $250,000 for classified documents on the U.S. Minuteman missile and other strategic forces. The FBI said Polish agents passed these documents to Soviet KGB intelligence agents. Maximum penalty, life in prison. Harper's lawyer, William Dougherty, finally learned Jay's real identity, told reporters that Harper read the affidavit and collapsed, that Harper wanted to cooperate in every way with the government. "We're going to work out something," Dougherty promised. Harper had information about Silicon Valley espionage. He'd been active for 4 to 8 years. He knew about other spies, other operations. The government wanted that information, and Harper was willing to deal. FBI agents searched Harper's apartment, found documents, electronics equipment, records of foreign travel. Then they searched other locations. The safety deposit box in Tijuana. Harper voluntarily disclosed its location. "You need to know about these," Harper told agents. "They should be picked up right away." Inside the Tijuana box, numerous classified documents ready for future deliveries. More evidence of the massive intelligence breach. The FBI also found Harper's diary, his meticulous notes about meetings, about payments, about trips to Europe, about conversations with Hugel. The diary was a spy's worst nightmare, a written record of an entire criminal conspiracy. Harper had documented everything because Harper wasn't a trained intelligence operative. He was an engineer, an inventor, a tinkerer who liked to take notes. And those notes would help convict him. In December 1983, a federal grand jury in San Francisco indicted Harper on 9 charges, 6 counts of espionage, 3 counts of tax evasion. The indictment alleged Harper photocopied 61 reports on ballistic missile defense secrets, delivered 37 of them to Polish agents in Europe and Mexico starting in 1979. The reports were stolen from Systems Control Incorporated in Palo Alto, where his now-deceased wife, Ruby Louise Schuler, held a secret security clearance. The reports eventually were sent to the Soviet Union. They described extremely sensitive research and development efforts. How to enable the Minuteman missile and other U.S. strategic forces to survive a preemptive nuclear attack by the Soviet Union. The Army called the breach beyond calculation. John Cunningham testified that the damage could affect the United States into the 21st century. Harper pleaded not guilty, but his defense was weak. The evidence overwhelming. The government had his diary, his financial records, witness testimony from the source within Polish intelligence, surveillance logs, wiretaps, photos, documents recovered from his apartment and the Tijuana safety deposit box. And Harper wanted to cooperate, wanted to testify against Confederates, wanted a lighter sentence. In April 1984, Harper changed his plea. Under an agreement worked out with federal prosecutors, Harper pleaded guilty to 1 charge of espionage. In exchange, the government withdrew the remaining 8 charges. Harper promised to testify against several Confederates if needed, provide information about other espionage activities in Silicon Valley, cooperate fully with the investigation. The government wanted William Bell Hugel, wanted others in Harper's network. But Hugel had disappeared after Harper's arrest, appeared before the grand jury but was never charged. Some investigators believed Hugel had been the initiating force in Harper's introduction to Polish intelligence, that there might be evidence of spy income in Hugel's tax returns, that Hugel was as guilty as Harper, but proving it was difficult, and Hugel was well connected, had been a State Department consultant helping negotiate various international business deals even while Harper's espionage was happening. The government decided to focus on Harper, take his cooperation, use his information. On May 14, 1984, federal judge Samuel Conti sentenced James Durward Harper Jr. in a packed courtroom in San Francisco. Prosecutor John Gibbons had called Harper a cunning jackal who stole and sold his country's most valuable defense secrets, asked for the harshest possible sentence under espionage law. Judge Conti had wanted prosecutors to seek the death penalty, but an appeals court ruled that out. So Conti sentenced Harper to the maximum available, life in prison. You are a traitor to your country who committed the crime not for any political reasons but for greed, Judge Conti said. Harper stood motionless, showed no emotion, expressed no sorrow or regret. The judge added a special request to his sentencing order, asked the parole board to consider any profits Harper might claim from future books and interviews when reviewing parole. Harper would be eligible for his first parole consideration in 10 years, in 1994, but Conti clearly hoped Harper would never be released. After sentencing, federal marshals transferred Harper to an undisclosed prison location. His defense attorney asked that Harper be protected with a false identity while in prison. Foreign agents might try to kill him. Other inmates might target him as a traitor. Harper became inmate number 75856-011, eventually landed at the United States Penitentiary in Lompoc, California, 175 miles northwest of Los Angeles, adjacent to Vandenberg Space Force Base. Harper later successfully petitioned a federal court to have the government return property seized during their investigation, including a teddy bear. That detail appeared in court records. A spy who sold nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union wanted his teddy bear back. And what happened to everyone else in this story? Ruby Louise Schuler was dead before the arrests, died at 39, never charged, never testified. Her friends insisted she never knew what Harper was doing. Investigators weren't convinced. William Bell Hugel was never charged, appeared before the grand jury, then left the country, lived somewhere outside the United States. The government indicated no plans to indict him. There are a lot of national security considerations. One official commented cryptically, Hugel died in 2003 in Mesa, Arizona. He was 76. His obituary called him a Silicon Valley inventor and entrepreneur, never mentioned the espionage case. Zdzisław Przechodzian, the minister, remained in Poland, protected by the Polish government, never extradited, never prosecuted. The source, the high-ranking mole within Polish intelligence who gave the FBI information about Harper, was never publicly identified, presumably extracted from Poland, protected by American intelligence. Robert Larson, the systems control executive who had been Louise Schuler's lover for 10 years, lost his security clearance temporarily, eventually got it back. He was an expert in Star Wars defense systems, too valuable. He pulled strings, made big money off government contracts again. No one ever charged him with anything. Sleeping with someone who isn't your wife isn't against the law. And investigators couldn't prove he knew Louise was stealing documents. Maybe he was guilty of felony misjudgment, one FBI source said, but it isn't against the law. The damage Harper caused continues decades later. The documents he sold gave the Soviet Union detailed information about American ballistic missile defense planning, about the Minuteman missile system, about how the United States intended to protect its nuclear forces from a preemptive Soviet attack, about American intelligence capabilities, and what the U.S. knew about Soviet missile accuracy. That information helped Soviet military planners understand American weaknesses, helped them develop countermeasures, helped them target American defenses. Even after the Cold War ended in the Soviet Union, Collapsed, the technology and intelligence Harper sold remained valuable to Russia and other adversaries. The information could help Moscow in a nuclear exchange today, could affect American strategic planning for decades. $4 billion worth of research and development, sold for $250,000 by a broke engineer who made $1,000 per week. And here's what makes this case terrifying for national security officials. Harper didn't have a security clearance, didn't work for the government, didn't have authorized access to any of the information he sold. He just married someone who did. Ruby Louise Schuler was a secretary, an alcoholic, a woman devastated by a failed love affair, and she had access to classified reports about America's nuclear defense strategy. No one at Systems Control noticed her drinking. No one noticed the documents she took home. No one noticed her late-night trips to the office with Harper. No one noticed 100 pounds of classified papers disappearing over several years. The security failures were catastrophic, and Harper wasn't even the only spy operating in Silicon Valley during this period. William H. Bell of Hughes Aircraft was recruited by Polish agent Marian Zakarski in Los Angeles at the same time, sold American military secrets for years, got caught in a separate FBI investigation. The FBI called it a textbook example of espionage. Silicon Valley in the 1970s and 1980s was a target-rich environment for foreign intelligence services. High-tech companies with defense contracts, engineers with gambling problems and financial troubles, secretaries with security clearances and alcohol addictions, a culture of risk-taking and rule-breaking. It was probably very easy and very fashionable to circumvent the law, one investigator said later. There were hundreds of suspects at one time in this case. Hundreds. James Durward Harper Jr. remains in federal prison today. Born in 1933, he would be 91 years old now if still alive. Inmate number 75856-011 at USP Lompoc. Eligible for parole since 1994. Never released. Whether he's still alive or died in prison isn't public information. The Bureau of Prisons doesn't confirm current status for inmates in cases involving national security. What is certain, Harper sold out his country for $250,000, gave the Soviet Union intelligence that cost $4 billion to develop, damaged American national security for decades, all because his wife worked as a secretary at the wrong company. And he thought he could get away with it. For 8 years, from 1975 to 1983, Harper lived a double life. Struggling Silicon Valley engineer during the week, international spy on weekends, flying to Europe to meet Polish agents in hotel rooms, collecting envelopes full of $100 bills, maintaining Swiss bank accounts, living the spy fantasy. He kept a diary documenting every meeting, every payment, every trip, because Harper thought he was smarter than everyone else, thought he could play both sides, tried to become a double agent, tried to cut deals with the CIA through his lawyer while still selling secrets to the Poles, thought he could have it all. The money, the adventure, the thrill of outsmarting American intelligence. Instead, he got life in prison. A teddy bear he petitioned to get back, and a legacy as one of the most damaging spies in Cold War history, a spy who sold nuclear secrets not for ideology, but for greed, not for political beliefs, but for money to pay his ex-wife and buy electronics equipment. Judge Conte got it exactly right. You are a traitor to your country who committed the crime not for any political reasons, but for greed. If you found this story as shocking as it is, hit that subscribe button. This channel brings you the most unbelievable true spy stories from the Cold War, cases that have been declassified, stories about ordinary people who made extraordinary choices. Some became heroes, others, like James Harper, became traitors. Drop a comment below. Did you grow up in Silicon Valley during the Cold War? Did you know anyone who worked in defense contracting? Were you aware that espionage was happening all around the tech industry? Let me know your thoughts, and if you want to see more stories about Cold War spies who got caught because of seemingly small mistakes, check out the playlist linked in the description. Because Harper's case proves something important about espionage, the smallest detail.